Well, we're getting ready to kick off the 2020 season. We're getting ready to kick off the 2021 spring football season. And Shane, it's great to be back on set. Obviously, it's not exactly the way we had expected the football season to get started, as we're here and getting ready to go into March. And we're going to have a 6-game slate with no playoffs.
Yeah, a little bit of a twist of things, I guess you could say. There for a while, we heard so many things like flatten the curve and all that, and you get to this season starting, and that didn't happen. Well, here we are.
Yeah.
Rather late than never, though.
Yep. So what we're going to do tonight is cover the South Division in our NUIC South preview. And, of course, you take a look at what the South Division in the last season we played, which was the fall of 2019, and the South went 7-14 against the North Division. And it appears that even coming into the 2021 spring season that it could be tougher yet for those divisional crossover games.
Yeah, and, realistically, we've seen that for quite a while now. This year, though, Aquin looks to be pretty solid, though.
Right, and when you talk about Aquin, when we look back at the 2019 year, we had a feeling Aquin was going to be a front runner with Forreston. It turned out that Aquin did run the table with an undefeated record, but they had tough games with Forreston, EPC, and West Carroll as expected as well. And even in the playoffs, they had a rematch with Stockton, which was a lot closer than the regular season game. And if you take a look at those 4 games alone, the separating scores was 2 scores or less. And it's not something you typically see out of an undefeated NUIC team that has to kind of struggle their way to where they went, especially when you're looking at the parity that we talked about in the 2019 season outside of Lena Winslow. But there was a lot more parity overall in those scores with Aquin against some of these other schools. EPC did not make the playoffs, barely, but Forreston, Stockton, and Milledgeville all made the playoffs, all got a first-round win before bowing out in the second round.
Yeah, outside of West Carroll, you had pretty much your playoff teams advanced, so that's always good, especially for conference-wide. We always talk about how sometimes that the lower end of the conference might not bode well, but when the playoffs get set up the way they did that year, it boded well for the NUIC, even though, look at what Lena Winslow did. It was kind of hard to expect anything other than that as well.
It's one of those things, though, that we hear quite often. We've talked about on several occasions in the past, and I think a lot of people would agree with it. And we need to get the playoffs back to a 1-32 seeding. When the best team in the South can't beat the top teams in the North, you know that there's a problem there. Just a couple years ago, we saw a 5-4 Orangeville team beat a 7-2 Toledo Cumberland team, and it was that win that propelled Orangeville into the playoffs that year. And you take a look at some of the other teams that come out of the South on a year-in, year-out basis, and on a regular basis, it's usually Tuscola and Athens are the 2 teams that we have to worry about, and that's even here lately when Tuscola is in 1A, if they make it into 1A, because they've been teetering on that 1A, 2A line here.
Yeah. And it almost gets to the point now where you talk 1-32 and the kids look at you kind of like that's foreign language. But, back in the day, that was great. You travel all day to head to Southern Illinois for a playoff game. It's great. It
was awesome atmospheres. I think a lot of people enjoy going to those new locations to play different teams, but obviously it's not something that's going to happen. The IHSA at least has given us a 1-16 north-south split.
Yeah, we'll take
it's better than the quadrants.
Exactly.
The only thing that could be potentially better is if they did a quadrant where they put the 1A north and a 1A south with a 1A North and a 1A South, and then you had the semifinal matchups like we saw in 2005 and 2007, and that's how we got Dakota and Auburn in the semifinals, or Dakota and Aledo in the state championship game. Those mid-2000 quadrants were something to really look at as well. But here we are. We're going to kick it off with the South preview. First team we're going to talk about tonight are the AFC Raiders, and if you take a look at the 2019 season, AFC did not hit the win column. They went 0-9 throughout the regular season, 0-6 in the South Division. Unfortunately, it's their second straight season that they've gone 0-9, and now with Coach Brad Winterland gone and Coach John Kutz taken over, he's hoping that the Raiders can kind of turn the tide here as the 2021 spring season breaks in. Obviously, AFC is going to be one of the few teams that has a 5-game schedule kicking off. But you know, they're going to enter this season as their last season in 11-man football, and then they're transitioning to the 8-man game this fall.
Yeah. Nah, look at the last couple of years. We've talked about that with a lot of teams. You know, like whether it was Warren going to the co-op or Polo even, you kind of play in a little more sense of pride. It's your last year 11-man. But, man, AFC's schedule doesn't really do them any favors, though.
No, I mean, you take a look at what they have on their schedule. Obviously, the week 1 is their no-game schedule, and then they have playoff perennials in Aquin, Stockton, and Forreston, and then you got West Carroll in week 4. Granted, we expect West Carroll to take a slide down, having a large majority of their talent graduate. And then they have Amboy in week 6, and Amboy there, too, has pretty much owned AFC since Amboy has come into the conference back in 2016. So, like you said, it's going to be a tough road for AFC moving ahead. You also take a look at their players that they return, and they're only returning 922 career yards.
Yeah,
so it's not a lot. They do have some experience coming back with guys like Peyton Lanning and Rodney Ramirez that they're going to need to be able to rely on. Lanning last year was a second-team all-conference utility player, and Rodney Ramirez was an honorable mention all-conference DB. Obviously, Ramirez has played QB in the past as well, but hasn't really done a whole lot as Winterland ran a triple option type offense. So it'll be interesting to see what Coach Kutz does coming in here. But, you know, you take a look at some of these other guys like Matt Thompson and Zane Murphy. Hopefully, you know, with having more ability to play in more meaningful games, they'll be able to help establish some things for the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting more of an opportunity now, too. I mean, it's not like you were pushed down the line from graduating seniors. It's your time now, so you'll get the ball and a little more of an opportunity than years past.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that the Raiders have had issues with is line play in the past. They're not very effective in their run defense, and they're going to have to build that up. And with the line, you know, we're potentially looking at guys like Josh Myers, Matt Nelson, Jaden Joseph, and Brody Wilstead as guys that AFC can hopefully mold into leaders of the team, along with being effective offensive and defensive linemen for the Raiders as well.
Right. And I mean, a lot of these teams that are going to 8-man, you're always struggling with depth anyways. I mean, there's a reason you're not going to be continuing 11. So, I mean, you get an injury here or there, and it can quickly unfold, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to see a large exodus here going into the fall season as the NUIC shifts into a regular 10-man conference with, 5 more teams going to 8-man football, giving the NUIC 7 total teams in 8-man football. And it's the right move for a lot of these schools. I mean, you take a look at the last time a playoff team won state that had an enrollment under 200 kids, and you got to go all the way back to 1989 to find the Orangeville Broncos.
I wasn't here.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean,
it's been a while.
Yeah, the public sector is very hard to make a playoff run when you don't have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about schools like Stockton, for instance. Somehow they get kids to go out despite the enrollments. Unfortunately, teams like AFC don't have that, and moving to 8-man football is a good thing. I hope that Coach Kutz can put some things together for the Raiders. It would be cool to see them at least get on the win column this year before they move to 8-man. But obviously, for this year, we haven't predicted at 0-5. All right, we're going to move on to the Milledgeville Missiles, and Milledgeville closed out the 2019 season at 1-8, going 1-5 in the South Division, and it was a big turnaround for the Missiles as the year before they'd gone 10-1, losing in the second round in a close game to Forreston, who eventually went on to win state, but going 10-1 to 1-8 was a big drop there for the Missiles, but we knew that they were going to enter 2019 looking at a down year. They pretty much finished right around where we had projected them at that time. Can they reload this spring with a bit more experienced group returning?
Well, I think they can. It's just whether or not the pieces will be put together to do that. But yeah, not to get off track here, but what an exciting time there was a couple years ago. I mean, it's always sad when you see that drop off, but that just speaks to the small school football environment sometimes.
It does, and Milledgeville has been one of those teams where, you know, when they're successful, they have a lot of good success, but they also have had times where their success is here, and then the year or two later, they're back down in the cellar, and it's always been a roller coaster ride for them.
If you look over the past how many years, I mean, back in '99, they were one of the three from the area that made the semifinals, and then back when I was in school, they were really good, and then they kind of wavered off a little bit, and then a couple of years ago, and here we are.
Right, exactly. And I mean, you take a look, you know, they're returning 1,672 career yards this year. Obviously, another team that's going to be moving to 8-man football with the quartet of the others that are also moving. But they have some good key players that are returning for this season, led by Damon Miller and Ryan Kendall, both who were part of the all-conference team. Miller was an honorable mention all-conference linebacker, and Kendall was a second-team all-conference DB. And both of them are running backs at the same time. So between the two of them, you know, they're bringing back around a little over 900 rushing yards between the two of them. So they're going to be key players in Coach Robel's offense coming into the 2021 spring season.
Careful there, I'll get you every time.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, you look to the you look to the guys who've had the experience and no more than Miller and Kendall. I mean, those are going to be your strong points going into the season. You're going to rely on guys like that.
Exactly. You're going to need to, both sides of the ball as well. Obviously, they're going to add guys like Ashton Nobis into the thick of things. Nick Smith returns at quarterback, so hopefully they can get some things going there. Chase Sarber should see more time, and then they're going to have to build a line around Logan Myers, Tyson Helfrich, Daniel Lones, and Blake Sherman. And if they can get these guys who are guys who played last year, but they were underclassmen, and now that they're getting into that upperclassman role, they got that extra year of experience, that extra year of build, and hopefully, you know, as we've seen with past Milledgeville teams that have done that. I mean, you take a look at that 2018 team we were just talking about. A lot of those guys were starters as freshmen when they were 1-8 and turned it around to a 10-1 season.
You take your beatings and you learn and you progress.
Right. So, you know, Coach Robel's going to have to rely on these missiles to do the same thing. Obviously, they're going through that downward trend in how many players they have coming out, so depth's going to be another issue for these guys. They are going to have to learn to step up and play some run D. Obviously, they're going to have a couple teams that they're going to face this year that are going to pass the ball a little bit more, so they're going to have to figure out a way to be more complete on a defensive scale of things, and then be able to establish their style of ball game, which in the past has been physically run game, but they're going to have to get something going. I mean, what they did against Forreston was they kind of went away from the run game and went into a quick pass type offense.
Quick strike.
Right.
Yeah.
And they might need to do that to help spread the ball out. And we're seeing a lot of teams start to trend that way.
Really are.
So, obviously, you know, we're looking at Milledgeville to finish at 1-5 this year. Maybe they can change some things around, but you know, time will tell here. But it'll be exciting to see what the Missiles can do once they get on the field. We move over to Amboy, and the Clippers finished the 2019 season at 2-7, going 2-4 in the South Division. And they enter this season with the new head coach, as former assistant coach Scott Payne will take over the reins from retired coach Gary Jones. Obviously, Coach Jones was in the Hall of Fame, did a lot of great things for Amboy football over the years, both as an assistant and as a longtime head coach. So, good thing for him that he's getting to move on, but it was a great thing to watch him establish what he had at Amboy over a long duration there. But looking at the Clippers, we kind of have poked fun at it in the past, but ever since Amboy has joined the NUIC, they have yet to get over that 3-win win total in a season. And obviously, last season they were 2-7. Can they change that in a shortened season? Granted, they're only going to play 5 games as well. They're one of those teams that does not have a week 1 opponent. So can they get a couple wins here that can help project them into a 3-2 record and have a winning type season?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely potential there. You look at the back half of their schedule, that's where it's more favorable. It's a little front-loaded there. Like you said, it's one of those things where when they first came to the conference, I think I was among them, that you kind of looked at like Amboy coming from where they did, a bigger school, like, okay, this might be a little more tougher competition in the NUIC, and I'm not poking fun here. It just hasn't formulated the wins for Amboy yet.
Right, exactly. I mean, I remember when we first watched them in that 2016 season. I mean, they were big. They looked the part.
Team.
Yeah, they looked the part, but they did not play the part.
Right.
And like you said, they are front loaded. They got games with EPC and Forreston to start. Granted, we're going to probably see EPC kind of have a downward slide this year, but they should still be competitive.
And those two teams have actually played some close games over the years.
They have. Forreston is also one of those teams that they bring back a lot of experience, but they're also going to start to digress from what we have seen in the last 6 seasons.
Last time we said that, they won a state championship.
Yeah. Very true. West Carroll is another team that they're going to be facing off, and they too are also going to be on a downward slide. But this goes back into what we've said about the South. While we see a lot of parity in the South Division, we also see it digressing quite a bit in comparison to the North Division.
I would agree with that.
Obviously, Amboy is going to be another one of those teams that's going to be moving to 8-man football this fall. They're going to be one of the largest enrolled schools in 8-man as well, with their enrollment at, 341, I think, is where they're at, with their co-op. So, we'll see how that transpires. Obviously, being that they're pulling 340 kids, you got to remember that they're pulling from Amboy, Lamoille, and Ohio. So you got 3 schools that you're trying to get some kids out, and they're having some depth issues there. I believe their roster last year only had like 28 kids on it. So,
which is kind of crazy for a school, for a co-op of that size.
Not only just a co-op of that size, but a team that has had the history that Amboy has over the years as well.
Realistically,
And so, looking at what they have coming back, they have a lot of returning players that have some experience.
Yeah, they do.
And they're going to have to get more formidable, but it kicks off with second-team all-conference linebacker Sean Fitzpatrick, who also doubles as a tight end.
Sorry about that.
Just watch decided to go off. But they also bring back Preston Hankel, who played quarterback last year, wide receiver the year before that. So we're going to have to see what happens there. But I believe that they would probably keep him at the quarterback position.
I would think so.
Then you have Joe Quest and Dylan Daniels coming back at the wide receiver position. You're going to look at Caden Whitnauer and Lane Bull, and probably Brady Jones as well. And then it comes down to the offensive line, where you're looking at guys like Justin Wicarius, Brian Murphy, Jaron Hochstetter, Brad Gaza, and Hayden McCoy to kind of build into roles that will help them out. So we're going to see what the Clippers can do here. They got the pieces that they can build with. It's just, can they get it to become formidable?
Right. And I mean, I feel like we say that every year. But I do think that if they put it together, there is a possibility they could win some games here.
Yeah, definitely. Like we already mentioned their schedule. They do have,
It's not that terrible.
we have them projected going 2-3. Realistically, they have a good opportunity to potentially even be 4-1, and 3-2 is definitely within grasp. How much can Coach Payne put together? Is he going to change some things up to make it his own, or is he going to continue the same path that Coach Jones had? Is going to be some of those questions. Will he make some changes? Which I think he probably will. Most coaches do. They will add some extra wrinkles.
Touch.
Yeah. And they definitely need to do some outside thinking around the box because, a lot of times they were running that pistol wishbone type offense, which didn't really bode well with the type of personnel that they had. So we'll see what the Clippers can do. But, yeah, right now 2-3 is what we're looking at with upside potential. Let's move over to West Carroll, where the Thunder were 5-5 last year, going 3-3 in the South. They made it to the playoffs where they lost to the number 1 seeded Fieldcrest team 20-8. I can't remember what Fieldcrest's name is.
It's not important. I'm kidding.
No, it's not either. But they lost 20-8.
That was a lot closer than that game.
It was very close. I mean, we had talked about West Carroll giving Fieldcrest a hell of a run for their money, and they did, and almost upset them at the same time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that goes to, at the time, Coach Lightson, who was able to beat Fieldcrest 2 seasons prior to that, 40-0 on the road at Fieldcrest as well. So, you take a look at what he had done for the program. Obviously, Coach Lightson's leaving West Carroll, returning to Stockton, his alma mater, and where he had started his coaching career at. And West Carroll's going to turn the program over to Teo Clark. Teo was previously a coach at DeSoto Central in South Haven, Mississippi. And that's, last year they were, what were they last year? I think they were 3-8. 4-7. They were 4-7, and his last year coaching there, they were actually 6-5. So, comes from DeSoto, plays in Class 6A down in Mississippi, and so that's one of the largest classes down there. So, good experience coming here. Obviously, going from big school to small school is going to be a big change for him, but he has learned very quickly that the NUIC is a powerhouse conference, and he's excited to be in it. Obviously, the Thunder lose a lot of players to graduation, but they will return some guys with a little bit of experience. However, they're going to have some low numbers, and they're going to need to lean on a senior class to help lead them this fall. So West Carroll is one of those teams, once again, that's playing a 5-game schedule, so we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, some of these teams have really graduated a lot, and, like you said, West Carroll is no stranger to that this year. Not many yards come back, so the kids that have played a little bit, you're going to lean on them to get you to kind of where you want to be, but definitely a little bit of a difference from year to year. I mean, we talked about that with Milledgeville this year. I think you can make a case for West Carroll to kind of fall in the same boat a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I mean, we've seen West Carroll with some success ever since they made that consolidation back in, 2004?
Yeah, it's been a while now.
Yeah, it seems like forever ago, but, there again, they have some success, they have down years. They have some success, they have down years. And under Coach Lightson, they've been right there knocking on the door.
They're one of those pesky teams.
Yeah, they gave you tough games. I mean, we've heard it a couple different times with, like, Coach Diddick saying that, they helped prepare them for the spread offense that they would eventually face in St. Teresa at State. We've heard Coach Aaron talk about, facing West Carroll and helping them.
GCMS was another one.
Yeah, so, West Carroll has definitely helped other teams be successful based off of what they've done, and they did it very well.
Right.
And it'll be great to see what Coach Clark can do. Obviously, he's going to retain some coaching staff there with Coach Tevin Hartman staying on, and whoever else that he gets to come into place. But looking at their returning starters, they have Alex Moll returning on the offensive and defensive lines, and he was honorable mention all-conference center last year. Cameron Simpson will be back at running back. Granted, he had 121 yards rushing last season, but he did play a big portion of minute time on the field. And then you're going to return linebacker Devin Davis. You're going to have Tommy Falk back. You should see some more carries and playing time out of Desmond Simpson. And Keldon McCombie is returning at tight end, defensive end as well. Some other guys that are going to have to step up their play and take some things over are going to be Ashton St. Ors, potentially at quarterback. And then you're looking at David Young, Ashton Miller, and Hayden Bates as well. What you don't see is a lot of offensive, defensive lines. So that will be an area of concern for the Thunder as we look into this 2021 spring season.
Right. I mean, you got a lot of returning kids. Don't get me wrong. It's just you haven't relied on them to this point. So it's all going to be kind of a learn as you go. And, we haven't really touched on this as the teams have gone by. This all is going to be significantly different than anything we've ever seen.
Right.
There's no given that any of this plays out the way we think. I mean, things are drastically different.
It is. I mean, we're going through
week to week. You don't really know what you're going to get.
We don't, and because you're going through a pandemic, you're going to have players playing their senior year. You have other players that are going to be playing this fall at colleges.
Yeah.
So, what are you going to see?
Yeah.
And those are the things that are going to be different. How are coaches going to game plan and utilize to, hey, you're a senior, I want you to get your playing time, but hey, you're a junior, I want you to be ready because we're going to utilize you this fall.
Right. And
when it matters.
Right. Again. And for Clark, you're coming into the conference. This is a little, you're probably never going to have this again, Lord. Hopefully. I mean, geez. But this kind of is a little bit of get your feet wet and kind of gear towards the fall.
Yeah, and you gotta prepare for both things. I mean, one of the things that I've said for the onset is I'm just glad these kids are getting the opportunity to play. For seniors, it gives them the opportunity to get on the field to play, get some more game film. There's been a lot of colleges that have stated that they're not going to make commitments to people until they actually do see film, and they are understanding that there's states, not just us, there's other states that are playing this spring. Not many, but there are quite a few, and they're trying to be fair to everybody.
Well, and can you really blame them? I mean, some of these kids haven't seen a field since 2019. I mean, if you're a coach, are you going to go out on a limb for a guy that hasn't touched a ball in 2 years?
Well, no. And that's where, you as a player, you need to be taking your course of action, doing your part, making sure you're staying working out. There have been camps available, making sure you're going to those camps and staying in the game. And now you have that opportunity to get back on the field. Granted, short time, it's not what many of us wanted, but at the same time, let's get the excitement going. Let's get on the field. Let's get these kids playing, and let's see what they can do.
Right, and I mean, I kind of got us a little off topic here, but the whole point I'm trying to make is, West Carroll might not be what they were in years past, but I think that it does benefit that you have so many returning kids.
Right.
On a year like this.
And the only downfall is, with the Thunder, you have a new coach coming in, so you're going to have a new system. You have some familiarity with some assistants that are going to be holdovers. But, West Carroll is another one of those schools that has a big enrollment, but not a lot of kids going out for football right now. And what are they going to do with that development?
Right.
Obviously, we have West Carroll selected to go 2 and 3. We could see them at 1-4. We could potentially see them at 3-2. They have a good schedule in front of them. They have Galena, EPC, Amboy, AFC, and Aquin. And really, that those first 4 games could go either direction. That week 6 game against Aquin's gonna probably be the tough one, or the toughest one. The other 4 should be competitive, and that's what West Carroll needs to build on there. All right, we move into a team that we're used to talking about here a lot in recent years and most of the past decade, and that's the EPC Wildcats. And last season they went 4-5 overall, but they were 4-2 in the South Division. That kind of shows you where
that's pretty
kind of shows you where the crossover was. But I mean, EPC had fighting chances all around. I mean, they had some tough losses. They had a tough loss to Aquin, a tough loss to Dupec. You take a look at a couple of their other. I mean, EPC could have easily been 8-1, 7-2 rather than 4-5. And there it is. They're 18 points away from being an 8-1 team, giving teams like Dupec, Aquin, and Forreston all scares, and losing a close one in Dakota as well. And Dakota didn't make the playoffs last year. So, but EPC is in one of those movements where they're looking at low numbers. They're also in a youth movement. They only have 6 seniors that are going to be on the team. Well, probably 8, because they do have 2 transfer-ins that are seniors in the Baber boys as they transfer in from Stockton. But they're going to have to find a QB. They had a sophomore QB last year, but it could be one of the senior transfers, which I'm looking at Wyatt Baber potentially taking over that QB role this year as they move into the Eastland School District. But, you take a look at what EPC returns. They have some good, solid core guys to build off of.
Yeah.
They're going to have some newcomers that they're also going to have to build up and work through. But they return 949 career total yards of offense. So it's kind of, Coach McNutt's got his work cut out for him here.
He does. And, you mentioned a young team, but a team that does return a lot. I think that will bode well for them in a season like this. It is funny you mentioned that, though, looking at their schedule last year and how close they were to being that. You're so close, but yet at the end you're so far. It's one of those weird things.
Yeah, I know. And it shows you the depth that the NUIC has. It's something that we talk about all the time. I mean, it's just like our opening statement. Take the top team in the South and bring them up here, and most of our teams are going to beat them.
Yep. And the separation between the top of the NUIC, well, not the top, your solid top NUIC teams and the bottom of your NUIC teams on a year like last year, you're generally going to play pretty close to each other.
Right. And it's one of the cool things. I mean, we saw that happen in 2017. We knew that Lena, Winslow, and Forreston were here, but then you looked at it was like Team 3 through Team 14 were all in the same boat, and then you had your bottom 3 teams.
Exactly.
And like you said, it was tiered. But the tier was very
those middle games were the best of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't know what you were going to get on a Friday night.
Exactly, and that's what makes it fun. I mean, we sit here and we do predictions and whatnot, which is a lot of fun. But at the same time, you never know what's going to show up on Friday night.
Right.
And maybe Saturday afternoon in this case, but
looking that
way. Yeah. But looking at what the Cats bring back, obviously they bring back first-team all-conference running back Logan Carroll, who had 713 yards and 6 touchdowns just a season ago. And joining him is going to be Bishop Grosinger, who comes back this year, but, they're going to have to rely on some more out of him. And, Thomas Owens is another one, along with Jackson Dovish. They have Jay Sheffy back at tight end, and then you're going to build a good, solid offensive line around guys like Caden Kohlauer, who's actually got a scholarship offer to go to McKendree University to be a power lifter. You got Caden Kuberski. Paul Sturdivant, Ben Bremer, and Loden Preston. And then you add in Christian Fisher as well. You know, you got some guys that can play the outside and inside linebacker positions, and then at the same token be offensive linemen, and then you got a couple of those guys that are going to be your D-line. So they have some solid pieces to build on here. It's just what can we do with the Wildcats offensively and then again on the defensive side. So that's where we go back to saying, you know, Coach McNutt's got some pieces here to build on. It's what can he do to get it all put together.
Yeah, and like we were talking a little bit ago, I mean, a team like EPC, these names just keep recirculating over and over. You know, the siblings of other EPC kids that have, you know, kind of been in similar situations where you're a part of a group that's returning. You're not quite sure what you're going to get, but a group like this, I mean, I don't see a reason why EPC shouldn't be very successful this year.
Right. I mean, you know, you take a look at what they have on their schedule: Galena, Amboy, West Carroll, Milledgeville, Dupec, Forreston. You know, maybe outside of week 5 and 6 with Dupec and Forreston, which I still anticipate will be competitive games, especially looking at the two teams. Obviously, I have them favored in the other direction. Yeah. But you take a look at that schedule, it is a good schedule for EPC, and there's an opportunity for them to have a very successful spring season here. Obviously, I'm pretty sure we have them projected at 4-2. And realistically, that looks to be a solid record for them. Likewise, they could end up going 5-1 and potentially 6-0.
I was gonna say, you know, how many times in EPC is one of those teams where you kind of, you know, they're gonna be good. That's not up for debate. It's just you've seen in the past where we think a good EPC team's gonna kind of sit a little bit here, and then you blink and they're undefeated.
Right.
Would not be surprised if that were the case here. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it wouldn't shock me in the least.
Right. I mean, outside of the what was it? It was the 2015 season when they were coming off the state championship and went 2-7 the very next year. Really, even going into that 2016 season, we were expecting EPC to be more competitive. We weren't expecting them to be 8-1.
Right.
I mean, granted, they lost in the first round to Rock Ridge, but, you know, then we watched them 2 years after that make it all the way to semifinals, losing to a very good and defending state championship GCMS team by 1 touchdown.
Yeah. What a game.
Oh, man.
By the way.
Awesome game. But, you know, Coach McNutt he's got good pieces around him, both on his staff. He's one of those guys. He's young, but he knows how to build these guys to get them to believe in themselves. Yeah. And and I think he's been a great addition to the Wildcat staff. Obviously, we saw what he did in his short time at Warren, where he's from. But yeah, he's done a great job with EPC, and I'm excited to see what he can do here and then get him building forward as well. We move over to the Forreston Cardinals, where they finished the 2019 season at 8-3, going 5-1 in the South Division, at lone loss coming to the Aquin Bulldogs. They eventually lost in the second round to Anawan Wethersfield 30-26, and Shane, that was a game that, you know, going into that game, I was very confident in the Cardinals setting up a third consecutive matchup, potentially, because they would have faced Morrison then in the quarterfinals. But that opportunity to play Lena Winslow definitely had that potential for that third straight semifinal matchup. But that was it. Anawan Wethersfield came ready to play that game, and
they were legitimate.
Yeah, they were. And I still feel it was a game that Forreston let get away. Yeah. But, you know, they started off the season ranked number 1, coming off their third straight title, but they had that game against Lena Winslow that they lost in a rout in what was the first ever running clock situation in that rivalry. And it proved to the state that the Cards were not at the same level as the Panthers, for a change.
Yeah.
Obviously, the second-round loss negated the potential of a third consecutive appearance with Lena Winslow, as we were just discussing. But the Cards, while they returned quite a bit, they still appear to be on a downward slope from what we're used to seeing over the years. But they still have a few guys coming back that can still get that engine to rev.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, you don't even want to talk about Lena Winslow, because, we talk about downhill slopes here and whatnot, way teams are training. I mean, you kind of have to appreciate what Lena has done and what Forreston has done for so long. To maintain that, it's only a matter of time, but yeah, you're going to have that downward slope.
Yeah.
To stay up there,
it's hard.
It's very difficult, and I don't know, whether you don't really even appreciate it when you're in the moment. And we've been spoiled with such good football around here with those two teams. And even though Forreston's on a downhill trend, is it really a downhill trend, or is it a downhill trend from what we've been so used to? I mean, still, you're still pretty darn good.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point there. I mean, what we've seen throughout the NUIC over the years is we watch teams climb up the hill, and they get there, and then they're on top of that hill for a little bit, and then they come down. But somebody else is climbing that hill to take over while that one's coming down. And, like you said, maybe that's where we're at. We're at that point where, yeah, Forreston may be sliding down a little bit.
Changing the guard, so to speak.
But, yeah, we're seeing other teams, one of the teams that, had a lot of criticism coming into last year in the Dupac Rivermen.
Yeah.
We definitely can see them on an upward trend, and they're only going to continue to grow. Whereas, like you said, how does Lena Winslow continue to be one of those top teams? How does Forreston continue to stay there? And it comes down to they have that program, they have that ability to take guys that have not necessarily played at the varsity level, but make them varsity level players.
Right, and you think about it though, and maybe this is off base a little bit, but it takes forever, that climb.
Yeah.
That climb takes forever. And when you get there, it almost seems like it's easier to maintain once you're there because you have the buy-in and the kids see that, okay, we're gonna win a state title this year. You start to fall off, and I hate to say it, but you look at kind of what Dakota did in the early 2000s, to 11. You're at the top for so long, and kids are buying it, and then you kind of get a downhill spiral, and the cables break on the elevator.
You lose a Hall of Fame head coach, and
so Forreston's kind of coming down a little bit, but still pretty good shape.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you take a look at what they do have returning. You got 1,791 career yards coming back still. You're still going to see Forreston run their running back by committee type offense, like I like to call it, with
watching the same movie.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing what they can. It's so much finesse watching them play. You take a look at Jordan Neuschwander. He's their leading rusher coming back, 587 yards, 4 touchdowns. Combine that with Braden Polich and Caden Shelton, who have also were big contributors last year as well. You got a three-headed monster there. You throw in guys like Ashton Schramm and Matt Beltran. Carter Dawes, that could probably be some fill-in guys to give breathers here and there as well. And then you take a look at Lucas Lingle and Tommy Apple, Jacob Fiorello, Curtis Akins, and Ryan Morris. Some of these guys are going to have to step up a little bit and probably do a little bit more as they get some more time. They're most likely going to see some time, whether it be on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. Obviously, as sophomores or freshmen,
they return a lot of kids.
They do. And, the downside for Forreston is believe it or not, it's their offensive and defensive line. They only have one returning starter there, and that's Travis Wilson.
Someone that's been so strong over the years.
Right. And here's another weird fact with Forreston. I cannot remember the last time Forreston came into a season without a single all-conference player on their team. And really, Travis Wilson's the closest one. Like, he should have probably been an all-conference offensive lineman. He's going to be a third-year starter, but he wasn't. And that's okay. They have that potential, right? But it's just odd that they don't have him in the offense already or on the defensive side of the ball. But they have the right players there, like you said. They've got guys coming back there going to be able to be very beneficial at what they do. Other guys that they're going to have to lean on and build up are going to be guys like Caleb King, Corbin Miller, Mason Fox, and Ryan Schoenhoven. See what these guys can do to help you establish your line, get what we've seen out of Forreston moving forward. And, you know, you look at their schedule. We were just talking about before we came on air. They have a very favorable schedule. They have Dakota in week 1 again. They have Milledgeville, Amboy, AFC, Aquin in week 5, which is has become a big rivalry game of late. And then they finish off with a true rivalry in EPC there in week 6.
Yeah, and looking at that, you know, you get those 4 first games with Dakota, Milledgeville, Amboy, and AFC, and that's kind of a good way to start your season. You get 4 games to kind of get the ball rolling into the back half where, you know, maybe they beat Aquin, maybe they beat EPC. I mean, they should be right there.
And I can tell you what, you know, Forreston's sitting in that mode where they know that people aren't going to be looking at them. Yeah. And those are the teams that are going to be dangerous.
Yep.
When you were once the top guy and now people are like, well, you're not the top anymore, but you're still very formidable, people just don't know who you are, you're dangerous. And that's where the Cardinals sit right now. Well, our last team of the night is the Aquin Bulldogs. They come off of a 11-1 record, going undefeated in the South Division 6-0. They lost in the quarterfinals to Lena Winslow 52-20. And they come back with a load of talent. Obviously making their way to the top of the South Division last year, as projected. They did have some stumbles along the way, but they were able to get past that. They enter the spring season with the most explosive offense, returning after reaching the quarterfinals for the 3rd time in 4 years. They bring back 8,127 career yards. Just amazing.
I don't have a calculator, but I'm guessing they return more yards than every single team we've covered tonight combined.
Yes.
Easily.
And the teams that we'll cover next week, too.
So, yeah, they return a lot, and this is kind of something we haven't touched on. If there was ever a year that you don't want to go to waste, and I'm sorry for calling it a waste, it kind of is in the grand scheme of things. Anytime you're playing without an end goal of a championship, just doesn't feel right to me. It's got to be this team that you kind of, if you're an Aquin Bulldog fan or in the community or whatever, you look at this team and you think, man, we should have had a full season and a playoff.
And you're absolutely right. Though, you know, you got those teams that you're like, man, wouldn't you like it if they could do this? I mean, look at what they have. They have a favorable schedule to get through here. They have key matchups, which are going to be fun matchups with Dupec in week 1 and Forreston in week 5, which will show us how good the Dogs will really be. But Aquin is leaving for 8-man football in the fall.
Another thing.
Which is the right move for Aquin, considering what they have coming up through the ranks. But at the same token, we're losing a quality enriched football team here in the Bulldogs, and it's kind of a sad thing to see go away.
It's a history too.
It is.
I mean, look at what the Aquin football program has done over the years.
I know everybody hates Aquin.
Yeah,
because of how good they've been.
Right, and you know, you look at it as a whole, and it'd be like Dakota years ago, or Lena now, Stockton, or Galena, like just they're gone.
Right. And here's one of the bittersweet things that I've actually, when I was going through all of my notes, it kind of struck me. But we have a player at the caliber of a Will Gustafson, who is first-team all-conference DB, unanimous. First-team all-conference QB, unanimous. First-team all-state, conference MVP, returning. He is going to finish his career in the top 20 in the conference in rushing yards. He's going to finish his career in the top 20 in the conference in passing yards.
Yeah.
He's going to be one of the most prolific offensive players we have ever seen, and we're going to lose at least 5 to 6 games out of him.
Yeah.
Imagine where he could finish his career at if he had a full season ahead of him. And I know there's other players around the state that are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And it sucks. I'm thankful that we get a chance to watch him play one last time before he takes off from us, though. Because he has been absolute dynamite since the first minute I saw him play in a fresh soft game 4 years ago.
That seems
or
like
3 years
yesterday.
ago. I know. It does. And it flies by. You could just tell when this kid took the field he was going to be something. And he's proven that. And the great thing about him is he's so humble. And that's what you're going to miss most about him.
Yep.
You had guys like Ty Steekel, who also, had to transition from a wide receiver role to a running back role last year and ended up first-team all-conference running back. Brennan Carlson and Andrew Bowman, two guys that are already in the top 20 in the conference in receiving yards. Imagine where they could be under another full season. And it's really cool to see what this team has done over the last 3 years coming into this year.
Yeah, I mean, not to cut you off there, but that's a team that you saw when they were freshmen and sophomores. And you kind of struggle a little bit, but you see the potential in it as it grows every year, and you get a finished I mean, it's not finished yet, but you've got a polished product that you kind of want to put in service, and the service is cut a little short.
Right. I mean, going back to Carlson and Bowman, both of them have over 900 yards receiving. You look at Andrew Bowman. He's got 17 touchdowns in his career. Easily going to surpass the 20 touchdown mark. Both of them were first team all conference. Bowman was utility. Carlson was wide receiver. Both of them were all conference, either an honorable mention or second team defensively. You add in guys like Evan Broggie, who is a first-team all-conference kicker. You have Aiden Gassman, who, if it wasn't for Gustafson, would be the quarterback. So they're putting him at wide receiver. He's a hell of a punter, was first-team all-conference punter. And then you throw in your line guys. You got Neuendorf and Aiden Curry. And Aiden Curry was first-team all-conference linebacker. Neuendorf was honorable mention all-conference D-line and second-team all-conference offensive line. You got another guy coming back in Cade Guykin, who is he's going to be offensive line. Last year he played just linebacker, defensive side of the ball because of the depth that Aquin did have last year despite the low numbers. But you have these guys coming back. And then you got big players like Drew Aggie coming back as well at linebacker, and he's going to pick up in a wide receiver / tight end type position. And then you're going to look at the development of guys like Austin Reed and Tony Domino and Clay Ludeking as well as they try to formulate a offensive line around those guys. And, it's like you said, it sucks to see a team like this go to waste, especially a team that we see being a top 5 ranked team to start off the season.
Right.
And definitely a favorite, not just in the NUIC, but a favorite at an opportunity to win a state title.
Yep.
And I'm excited to see what they can do. It's great that they're going to be able to play, but like you say, it'd be awesome if there were more marbles on the table to go after.
It would be.
But, what do you do? There's not a whole lot you can do. Obviously, Aquin's going to have a schedule, like we said, with Dupec and Forreston on it, and then they're filling it out with guys like AFC, Milledgeville, East Dubuque, and West Carroll. So, theoretically, we got them predicted to go 6-0. There's not a reason why they shouldn't go 6-0, But I think that week 1 game with Dupac's going to be a lot of excitement. I think it'll be an opportunity to take in a great offensive match to see who's going to win. And that's really, to me, a toss-up type game to start off the season. Probably game of the week type material in the NUIC. Yeah. So it'll be exciting. But yeah, Aquin's definitely got our eye, and they got a lot of people around the state that are interested to see what they can do even in a 6-game schedule. So we'll see what happens. Well, that wraps up what our South Division looks like. Obviously, Aquin is definitely the favorite. You take a look at, past conference titles over the last, almost 20 years, and EPC leads with 7, Aquin with 5, Forreston with 3, and Milledgeville was 2 in 2008 and 2018. So no surprise to see Aquin forced in EPC towards the top once again as our favorites in the South Division. But really, it's definitely geared towards the Bulldogs being their year to take home the conference title once again.
Yeah, it's one of those things. We talk about every year. You got your teams that are generally there every year, and so far it really doesn't look any different this year. Just wish we had more games and more opportunities for the kids to have more opportunities as well.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's we've said it. It's one of those things that we can't control. Thankfully, we at least get a season to play, and it's going to be fun. We're going to make it fun. We're going to do the things that we always do. We're going to bring you the stats. We're going to bring you our predictions, our projections, our analysis, our game recaps, everything that we do every single year. We're going to add a little twist this year to where we're going to create our own virtual or BCS type state champion. So we are going to do some things to make it fun. And no, we're not going to have a bias just to the NUIC. It's still going to have to be earned because that's what we believe. That's what we've always done. You got to go out and earn it. Yeah, we believe the NUIC is the best conference, proven it over the years. But titles aren't just given to you. They're won and they're earned. So no different here. Obviously, we got a lot of good things coming up. Getting excited for kickoff on March 19th or March 20th for some of these teams. Obviously, we're going to keep rolling out with our Player of the Week, which we were very thankful to Eric White and Benchwarmers for being our sponsor once again on our Player of the Week segment. And looking forward to a good 6-week season, even though, like you said, wish it could be a little bit more.
Yeah, and by the time that kind of rolls on, your weather's warming up, and before you know it, you're back into the fall. So it kind of feeds right into it.
Yeah, it's kind of like our spring training, so to speak, for the fall season. But great opportunity for the kids to get game film. Obviously, for those that are seniors, to have that opportunity, get that game film, have colleges take a look at them. Those that are not, get out to camps. That's how you're going to get your exposure. Talk to your coaches. Get on social media. Get on Twitter especially. Talk to those college coaches. Just put your name out there. Put yourself out there. Obviously, make sure you're getting good grades and working hard. I mean, that's going to be what gets you where you're going to go. Next week, we come back with our NUIC North Division preview, which we're excited to bring that as well. Until then, always root for the NUIC.